Let me talk to somebody who's sitting there right now with a broken heart, replaying conversations, asking, why wasn't I enough? Let me tell you something real simple but real powerful. It was never about your value. It was about their character. Let me speak to somebody who is tired, emotionally drained, overthinking at night, checking their phone, waiting for a message that should not even matter anymore. Because when somebody plays with you, when somebody disrespects your heart, your time, your loyalty, the first battle is not with them. The first battle is with you. Because what most people don't realize is this. The real damage is not what they did to you. The real damage is what you start doing to yourself after they do it. You start chasing. You start explaining. You start overgiving. You start trying to prove your worth to somebody who already showed you they cannot recognize it. And I need you to hear this clearly. The moment you start chasing someone who has already disrespected your value, you are not fighting for love anymore. You are fighting against your own dignity. And let me tell you something I've learned about life and people. You can never convince somebody to value what they are committed to misunderstanding. Because when a man or a woman plays with you, they are not confused about your value. No, no, no. They are very clear. They just believe you will accept less. They believe you will stay. They believe you will adjust, tolerate, forgive, and keep giving chances until you forget what you deserve. And that is where you have to stop the cycle. See, I need you to understand something powerful here. Every time you chase somebody who is pulling away, you are not bringing them closer. You are pushing yourself further away from your own worth. Because now your emotions are tied to their inconsistency. Now your peace depends on their attention. Now your happiness depends on their mood. And that is not love. That is dependency. And let me tell you something that might sting a little, but will save you a lot of pain in the future. If somebody truly values you, you will not have to chase them. You will not have to beg for consistency. You will not have to question your position in their life every single day. Because real love does not confuse you like that. Real love does not make you feel like you are competing with other options. Real love does not make you feel small just to feel included. So when you find yourself chasing, when you find yourself overthinking, when you find yourself constantly trying to fix how they see you, that is your sign. Not to try harder, not to love deeper, but to step back and wake up. Because what you are actually chasing is not them. You are chasing the version of them that you created in your mind when things were good. You are chasing the potential. You are chasing the memories. You are chasing the idea of what it could have been. But reality is standing right in front of you, and reality is showing you how they are treating you right now. And I need you to hear me when I say this. You cannot build a future on somebody's potential while ignoring their present behavior. Now listen closely. The strongest move you will ever make in your life is not getting revenge. It is not arguing. It is not proving a point. The strongest move you will ever make is stopping the calls, stopping the texts, stopping the explanations, stopping the emotional begging, stopping the availability. And for someone who is inconsistent with your heart, because silence is powerful, distance is powerful, growth is powerful. When you stop chasing, something happens. You start seeing clearly. You start realizing how much of your energy you were wasting. You start noticing how much peace you lost trying to maintain something that was never stable in the first place. And that is when you begin to rise again. Because the truth is, the moment you stop chasing somebody who disrespected you, you start attracting a better version of yourself, a stronger version, a calmer version, a version that does not beg for attention because it understands value, does not beg to be seen. And let me tell you something else. The people who play with you, the ones who took your love for granted, they don't expect you to stop. They expect you to keep coming back. They expect you to stay stuck. They expect you to forgive without change. But the day you stop, that is the day you change the entire story. Because now they are no longer in control of your emotions. Now they are no longer the center of your attention. Now they are no longer your focus. And that shift right there is what creates regret, not your anger, not your words, your absence, your growth, your peace. And I want you to understand something deeply. You don't have to destroy somebody who played with you. Life handles that part. Your job is to rebuild yourself so completely that you no longer recognize the person who tolerated that treatment. So stop chasing what walked away from your peace. Stop chasing what confused your heart. Stop chasing what made you question your worth. Because the real win is not getting them back. The real win is getting yourself back. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about something that most people don't understand until it's too late. And that is the power of silence after disrespect. Because when somebody plays with your emotions, when somebody treats your loyalty like it is, optional, your first instinct is to speak louder, explain more, fight harder, and prove your worth. But I'm here to tell you, the moment you start over-explaining yourself to somebody who already decided not to value you, you have already stepped out of your power. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is protection. Because every time you try to convince somebody to see your value, you are actually revealing that you don't see it clearly yourself in that moment. And I need you. And to understand something very important about life and relationships, real recognition does not require a speech. Real love does not require a presentation. Real respect does not require begging. When somebody truly sees you, you don't have to explain your worth repeatedly. You don't have to prove your loyalty every week. You don't have to question your position in their life every time they change their behavior. So when you find yourself in a position where you are constantly trying to remind someone how good you are, how loyal you are, how much you care, that is not love anymore. That is emotional exhaustion. And what happens next is dangerous if you don't catch it early. You start losing yourself. You start reacting instead of living. You start checking your phone like it controls your peace. You start measuring your self-worth based on someone else's attention. And that is the moment you stop being powerful and start becoming emotionally dependent. But let me show you something. Stronger than emotion, discipline. Discipline is when you feel like calling him, but you don't. Discipline is when you feel like explaining yourself again, but you stay quiet. Discipline is when you want to go back, but you remember how many times you already ignored your own value just to keep something temporary alive. Because silence does something powerful. It brings clarity. When you stop chasing, you start seeing. You start noticing patterns you ignored before. You start realizing how one-sided things really were. You start understanding that what you thought was confusion on their part was actually clarity all along. They knew exactly what they were doing. And you were the one hoping it would change. And here is where your real transformation begins, because silence forces you to meet yourself again. It forces you to rebuild your energy, your focus, your confidence. It forces you to stop living in reaction and start living in direction. And when you finally stop giving your energy to someone who is inconsistent with your heart, you start redirecting it to your future. Now, let me move to something even deeper, because silence is not the end of your power. It is the beginning of your comeback. And this is where most people get it wrong. They think the goal is to make the other person regret it immediately. But real growth does not work on revenge. Real growth works on elevation. You don't need to chase revenge. You need to chase elevation, because the most powerful form of regret is not what you say to somebody who played with you. It is what you become after they lose access to you. When you stop trying to prove a point and start building a life, that is when everything shifts. One day they are going to see you again, not in the same emotional space, not in the same broken version, not in the same energy they walked away from. They are going to see you upgraded, focused, peaceful, smiling without them, living without them, growing without them. And that version of you is going to speak louder than any argument you ever had. Because let me tell you something about human nature. People don't always regret losing you when you are emotional. They regret losing you when you are unbothered. They regret losing you when you are no longer accessible. They regret losing you when your life no longer pauses for their inconsistency. And here is the truth nobody likes to admit. The version of you that chases, explains, and overgives is not the version that creates regret in someone else. It is the version that confirms their assumption that you will always stay. But the version of you that walks away quietly, rebuilds, and upgrades your life, that is the version they never expected. And by the time they realize it, you are no longer in the same emotional space they left you in. You are no longer available for confusion. You are no longer accessible to inconsistency. You are no longer the person who needed closure from them, because you already gave it to yourself. So understand this clearly. Your glow up is not for them. Your peace is not for them. Your success is not for them. It is for you. But the side effect of becoming a better version of yourself is that people who underestimated you will have to watch you from a distance and wonder where they lost you. And that right there, that is where regret lives. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to somebody who is finally waking up from emotional confusion, somebody who gave too much and stayed too long and tolerated things they swore they would never tolerate. Because when somebody plays with your heart, the first thing you lose is not them. The first thing you lose is your clarity. You start questioning your value, your decisions, your worth, and you stop believing that love is supposed to hurt like this. But I need you to understand something from the beginning. Love is not supposed to drain you. Love is not supposed to confuse you, and love is not supposed to make you compete for attention you already deserve freely. The first key truth you must understand is this. Stop measuring your value by someone who failed to recognize it. Because the moment you allow somebody's inconsistent behavior to define your worth, you put yourself in a prison you cannot escape emotionally. You start thinking, maybe if I love harder, they will stay. Maybe if I explain more, they will understand. Maybe if I prove myself again, they will choose me. But listen to me carefully. The problem was never your effort. The problem was their capacity to value what was already real. And you cannot force someone to respect what they have already decided to overlook. So what happens next is dangerous. You start overgiving. You start over-texting. You start over-explaining. You start lowering your standards just to maintain access to somebody who is not even protecting your peace. And I need you to hear this clearly. Every time you abandon your own boundaries to keep someone, you are not building love. You are breaking yourself slowly. Because real love does not require self-abandonment. Real love does not require you to shrink your needs just to fit into someone else's inconsistency. Real love expands you. It does not erase you. And here is the shift you must make. Stop negotiating your worth with someone who is still deciding how to treat you. Because a person who truly values you does not leave you guessing. They do not keep you in emotional confusion. They do not show up when it is convenient and disappear when it is not. So the moment you notice confusion becoming a pattern, that is your answer right there. Clarity does not come from their words. It comes from their actions. And actions have already spoken. Now, the second key truth you must embrace is this: silence is your strongest response. Because after disrespect, after emotional gains, after inconsistency, your power is not in arguing more. Your power is in doing less. See, most people think the way to fix. Heartbreak is communication overload. More calls, more texts, more explanations, more chances. But what you don't realize is that every time you keep chasing someone who is pulling away, you are feeding their assumption that you will always stay available no matter how they treat you. Silence changes everything, because silence forces distance and distance creates clarity. When you stop reacting, when you stop chasing, when you stop trying to fix something that the other person is not even, and trying to maintain, you begin to see the truth for what it is. You start realizing you were not in a balanced situation. You were in an emotional imbalance where you gave more than you received. And that realization is painful, but it is also powerful, because silence does something else. It returns your focus back to you. You start noticing how much energy you lost. You start remembering who you were before the confusion. You start reconnecting with your own peace. And slowly you begin to rebuild yourself without needing validation from someone who was never consistent in the first place. That is not losing love. That is reclaiming yourself. And let me be very clear here. Silence is not about punishment. It is about protection. It is you finally saying, I refuse to continue giving energy to something that keeps hurting me. It is maturity. It is emotional intelligence. It is choosing peace over chaos. Now, the third key truth you must understand is this: your greatest revenge is your transformation. Not anger, not arguments, not trying to make them jealous, but becoming unrecognizable in your growth. Because the version of you that was hurting, waiting, overthinking, and overgiving is not the final version of your story. That was just a chapter, not your identity. Real transformation begins when you take all that emotional energy you were wasting on someone else and redirect it into your life, your goals, your health, your mindset, your confidence, your future. Because the truth is, the same energy used to cry over someone can be the same energy that rebuilds your entire life if you redirect it correctly. And here's what most people don't understand. When you elevate yourself, you don't need to chase closure anymore. Life gives you closure naturally. One day, the same person who ignored your value will see you thriving without them. And that image will stay in their mind longer than any conversation you ever had. Not because you tried to hurt them, but because you outgrew the space they put you in. And by the time they realize what they lost, you are no longer emotionally available for confusion. You are no longer the same person they took for granted. You are no longer standing in the same emotional place. You have moved forward. And that forward movement, that is your real victory. Ladies and gentlemen, let me speak to somebody who has reached that breaking point where you are no longer just hurt. You are tired of being hurt. There is a indifference. Hurt still hopes. Tired starts to wake up. And when you get tired of being disrespected, tired of being confused, tired of giving your best to someone who gives you inconsistency in return, that is when your life begins to change. Because the first thing you have to understand is this: not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay, and not everyone who leaves is a loss. Some people are a lesson. Some people are a mirror. Some people are a wake-up call. And when somebody plays with your heart, the real question is not why did they do it? The real question is, why did I allow it for so long? Now listen carefully, because this is where your power starts to return. The first key truth is this: stop ignoring patterns, because people don't confuse you randomly. They show you who they are consistently, and you ignore it repeatedly. The hot and cold behavior, the disappearing acts, the late replies, the broken promises, the emotional distance followed by temporary. And attention, that is not confusion, that is information. But what most people do is they fall in love with potential instead of paying attention to patterns. And let me be honest with you, potential will always lie to you. Potential will make you believe they will change. They will realize, they will come around. But patterns tell the truth every single time. So when you see someone showing you inconsistency, believe the consistency of that inconsistency. Because nobody accidentally treats you well sometimes and poorly other times. That is a choice. And once you understand that, you stop blaming yourself for their behavior. The second key truth is this: stop overinvesting in underinvested relationships. Because one of the biggest emotional traps is giving 100% to someone who is giving you 20%. And you think if you give more, it will balance out. If you love harder, they will love back. If you stay patient, they will eventually realize your value. But life does not work like in emotional mathematics. When someone is not investing in you equally, you are not in a relationship anymore. You are in a depletion cycle. You are draining yourself trying to fill a gap that they are not even trying to close. And the more you give without receiving, the more you lose yourself. You start becoming anxious. You start overthinking everything. You start questioning your worth. And slowly, you begin to accept less just to avoid losing even the little attention you get. But I need you. And to understand something powerful, love is not supposed to cost you your peace. Love is not supposed to make you feel like you are begging for consistency. Love is not supposed to feel like you are constantly trying to earn basic respect. So the moment you realize you are overinvesting, that is the moment you need to pull back, not push harder. The third key truth is this: emotional detachment is not cruelty, it is clarity. Because when you detach emotionally from someone who is inconsistent, you are not becoming cold, you are becoming aware. You are finally stepping out of illusion and stepping into reality. And reality sometimes hurts, but it heals you in ways illusion never could. Emotional detachment is when you stop reacting to their behavior. You stop checking their social media for answers. You stop waiting for explanations. You stop letting their mood decide your peace. You stop allowing their presence or absence to control your emotional state. And in that space, you begin to find yourself again. Because the truth is, when you are too emotionally attached, you lose your identity in the connection. You start thinking about them before you think about yourself. You stop prioritizing them over your own needs. You start adjusting your life around their inconsistency. But when you detach, you come back to yourself. You start rebuilding your focus, your goals, your confidence. You start remembering that your life does not revolve around someone else's